July 17th to 28th, I'm going to be firing a bunch of bullets at the WSOP at Durant. And so if you are interested in buying action, if you want to, support the channel, if you want to support me and my poker career, buying action would be a great way to do that. Everything, all the information is right here, as you can see. But without further ado, let's get into it. So today, I want to cover some more ICM stuff. I kind of want to go into more specific ICM situations. I was reading this blog on GTO Wizard, and it actually discusses something that's pretty interesting and something that you'll quite commonly face in a lot of your tournaments. That's pretty important to understand, and that's facing three bets from bigger stacks at the table, stacks that cover you. Whether you're a medium stack, another big stack, or a short stack, it can be really tough facing off against three bets, especially out of position against players that have you covered and can knock you out of the tournament in certain scenarios. And so basically in general, just my original like number one advice for being in the spot is just tighten up your range. It really can be that simple. Obviously, it would be a disaster if you called a four bet jam with pocket eights or pocket nines and got knocked out of the tournament. Let's say you're like fourth in chips and a big stack four bet rips it in your face and you have like 40 big blinds and they cover you by 20 bigs. So for them, losing in the tournament wouldn't be a disaster, but it wouldn't, or losing the flip wouldn't be great, but it wouldn't be a disaster. Even if you know that they have like ace king there and you have pocket eights, you might, if especially if you don't have much invested, it can be worth it to find a fold just in these spots because you're really just, it's not worth missing out on potential pay jumps, especially if there's a lot of shorter stacks at your table to take this flip, because yes, winning this will make you the chip leader and it will give you a good shot at winning the tournament. Um, but overall, you're gonna miss out on a lot of return on your investment on your buy-in, because you're gonna be getting knocked out of the tournament in ninth rather than third or fourth a lot more often. And so, just erring on the side of caution and being a lot tighter in those situations when you're facing large bets from people that cover you is just generally a good idea. And so it can be really difficult even in the smaller like three bet pots. Let's say you raise um under the gun or even six-handed. Let's say you raise in the low jack with, ace 10 offsuit. And then you get three bet by a large stack on the button for seven big blinds. Let's say you opened to two and a half, they three bet to seven big blinds. It can be really difficult to know what to do in this situation because on one hand you have ace 10 offsuit, it's a decent hand. And since they are three betting so wide, you really are going to be dominating a lot of their range because if they are a strong opponent, they know that they're going to get away with a lot of three betting. I mean, I think the button in this spot we can look at. Here's my GTO wizard. Here it is. Okay, we can look at how wide the button is going to be having to open in this spot. So let's say ICM classic final table, say six players left. And let's say where's a big stack on the button at 30 bigs? Right here. This is a pretty good example. Oh, I misclicked it by one. That's the one I clicked. No, am I like stupid? Oh, okay. It's on the small blind. But even the small blind, let's just say. So let's say you raise from the low jack to just two big blinds, or I said hijack. Let's say hijack raised to two big blinds, small blind, three bet too small to six big blinds. You're really at the bottom of your range here with 30 bigs with ace 10 off. And I mean, you can see it's pure jam or fold. You're never calling in this spot, even though you have position. Oh, wait, that's the big blind. I'm stupid. Yeah, you're actually okay. Yeah, I was gonna say that really doesn't seem right. Yeah, you're folding ace ten off, pure fold, just because even though their range is so wide, like if you look at the small blind, I mean, they are three betting a lot of hands worse than ace ten off. Like a lot of hands worse than ace 10 off. I mean, king jack off, king 10 off, queen 10 off, ace x off, ace 9 and below, queen 8 suited and below, king 8 suited and below. They're going to be three betting a lot of these hands that you just have absolutely smashed. And even the hands that you don't have smashed, like queens, jacks, 10s, even kings that they're going to be raising, you're going to still have live cards against. And so if you spike an ace, you're probably good. But on the small part of their range that has the ace king, ace queen, and aces, if you spike an ace, you're going to get stacked and it's going to be a disaster because you're going to go from third in chips, six handed, with a pretty strong lead over a lot of the shorter stacks at the table, um, to knocked out in sixth place. And that's just an absolute disaster. It's not necessarily an ICM torch, but it is definitely a big ICM mistake to be going in with ace 10 off on with 30 big blinds. I mean, it's just not something you want to do. So the solver just has you pure fold ace 10 off. Ace 10 suited, you'll notice, is a jam, which means it's pretty close, but it's just not close enough, and it's not worth it. It's just not good enough of a hand because with like ace queen off or ace king, you have the luxury, or even queen king queen suited, you have the luxury of dominating a lot of your opponent's, three bets. Because let's say you do jam, what are you getting called by here? You're only getting called by premium. So having king queen off is great because you block over half of the hands in their calling range. Obviously, they're going to snap you off with aces, queens, jacks, tens. But having an ace here, it doesn't block. It does block like the ace king, ace queen, but it doesn't block your kings and queens that are also going to be calling you off. So when you three bet rip it here for a large size, honestly, I agree with the solver. I think queen queen suited is just a better three bet bluff because you just have more blockers to their strong hands. I mean, you really block tons of combinations. And so it's super important. Like having an ace here, you block four combos, eight combos. It's that 14 combos. And then another, what is this? I can't count. How many combinations of ace king off are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So you block 24, maybe if you give them some ace queen off, let's say you block 30 combos. Where if you have king queen suited, 4, 8, 20, 26, 32, and if you give him the same six, you block 38 combos. So you're blocking 30 versus 38 combos. That's an extra 8 hands that they can't have. Potential combos. Potential. You're not blocking like everything. It's not like it's impossible for them to have these, but you're just blocking more combinations of hands. And so king queen suited is just a better, you know, 4-bet rip in the spot for 30 bigs. And when you get called, I mean, obviously you're really not loving life, but a lot of the times when you get called, you're going to have one, if not two live cards. I mean, unless you're getting called by aces. So, because, I mean, you're going to be blocking kings and queens, so it's going to be really hard for them to have that. Because, I mean, having any queen blocks three combos. So they're down to three combos of queens, three combos of kings, and then six combos of aces. So there's really only 12 combos of hands that you're absolutely hating getting called by. While there's 3, 6, 15, math, 21, 27 combos of hands that you don't hate seeing a call from. Because, I mean, yeah, if you get called by ace king suited, ace queen suited, ace king off, it's kind of a disaster. You're not loving life, but you do have equity. You're not like dead. I mean, even if you get called by queens, you're not dead. You have a live card. So really getting called by queens wouldn't even be that bad either. You can take those combos out. Because you have like, what? You have a live cards. You got like 20-ish percent, 27, 26, 27% with the suited combo, maybe 28. So, like, it's not amazing for you, but it's not completely terrible. And you're folding out so many of these junk hands that they're going to be raising with a lot. I mean, you're going to be folding out the king jack off, queen jack off. I mean, it does suck because you kind of also block a lot of their bluffs, but you don't block you unblock a lot of their ace X bluffs. So it kind of goes both ways with blocking their bluffs and blocking their value. You kind of just block both. Um, but that's, they're going to have a lot more king X suited, queen X suited, king Broadway, offsuit Broadways. They're just going to have inherently more of these in their range than their ace X offsuit. And so, having the king and the queen kind of balances out. I think they have about the same amount of bluffs anyways. But, I mean, you're ripping a lot of hands, like king queen suited, even sixes gets in there and just rips it all in some of the time. I don't hate that. Aces is just pure min clicking, and obviously you have a little bit of bluffs, like you have some ace five offsuit that's gonna bluff ace four suited, ace five suited, ace queen suited, ace king suited. That gets in there and bluffs a little bit of the time. Ace jack off, I don't hate as a min click bluff because if they 5-bet rip it, you can snap fold. Ace king suited, I'm not really sure how happy you are. Like, let's say you do raise in the hijack. Let's say you do raise. The small blind does have some more, just pure get it in bluffs. But I mean, you're really not folding out very many combinations of hands, and you're kind of just pure call. Yeah, you're just pure calling all of these. You're not like too excited to just get it in with ace queen suited in that spot, but I don't completely hate the play. But anyways, so you can see it gets a little hairy when you're facing these bluffs, and so you got to fold out. You got to raise fold a lot of really strong hands like the ace 10 offsuit that you just really might not fold normally. And a lot of players that don't have a strong understanding of ICM will just raise call ace 10 offsuit, ace jack offsuit. They'll just raise call, pure raise call. Or they might raise call ace 9 suited or king jack suited, or they might just raise call king queen offsuit. And as you can see, and they might raise call with a lot of hands. And as you can see in this spot, the hijack has 0 raise calls. 0. Literally 0.31 combos. What even is the one combo that they're calling? Oh, a little tiny sliver of ace 10 suited, like once in a blue moon. It's kind of funny that it's ace 10 and that's the hand that I was talking about. Anyways, yeah, they really have like almost no raise call. Though they have 0 raise call essentially in theory. So and then a lot of players wouldn't bat an eye at raise calling against a dominating stack. And I mean, chip EV, that's not a terrible play to make, but ICM, you're just burning so many buy-ins because in the event you might be dominating your opponent a good amount of the time and you might win, some smaller medium pots, but the big pots that don't go your way, that you lose, like let's say you stack off, you hit, a king with king queen suited and you stack off 30 big blinds and they, drilled their king 5 suited, they drilled the 5 on the turn and then they just stack the shit out of you and you're out of the tournament when you really were in contention to win it or get second. Getting knocked out in 6 there is just absolutely terrible for you. It's a terrible result. And that's exactly what you want to avoid, which is why you almost never take anything post. I mean, the only thing you're really taking post here is when you raise and they just flat call. And even then, navigating that spot can be challenging. I mean, we'll just do the MTT chip EV. Let's say you raise and then small blind calls and then, it goes full. Let's say the flop comes down like, it's a great flop for you. King 7 deuce. I mean, King 7 deuce, no draws. Just an absolutely outstanding flop for you. I mean, check, you bet range and then they fold and then you're loving life. But, I mean, there's also some flops that you're going to hate, like, trying to think. What would be a just terrible flop for you? 7-6-5 flush draw. 7-6-5 flush draw is so bad for the low jack here that the small blind, and this is just in chip EV. This isn't even ICM, by the way. I had to change it chip EV because I hate using the AI on GTO Wizard. I don't hate it. I just am not studied with it enough to be confident in using it. But the small blind leads 32% of hands. They lead all their fives, all their sixes, all their sevens. They lead, you know, well, not all. They lead some of their fives, six, sevens, and eights and fours. I mean, they just have so many leads, and in an ICM spot, facing a lead like this is just terrible because you're going to have a very, very top heavy range, and you can't afford to float with a hand like King Queen offsuit, King Queen suited, Jack 10 suited. I mean, you're not loving life when you're floating against a covering stack with 30 bigs, because then you're down to 25 big. Let's say you make this call with Queen Jack offsuit, and the turn is the Jack of spades. You turn top pair. Great scenario for you. This is just inherently a worse card for them, so they're gonna be doing more checking than betting. Let's say they check, you bet, you bet half pot, 2/3 pot. What is this? What's the size of the pot? Math. You bet on the larger side, and let's say you just get, check ripped on. You are absolutely hating your life because all of these, Queen Jack, King Jack, Ace Jack, you're just folding in ICM. I mean, maybe you call with Ace Jack suited, like Ace Jack of Hearts is the only combination that you're calling with here. King Jack of Hearts, Queen Jack of Hearts, Jack of Hearts. You're calling some aces. See, even some of your aces are going to be folding. Aces that block flush draws. Going to be calling more. The aces that unblock flush draw is going to be folding. But I mean, you can see how this is just not ideal at all. Because in an ICM spot, I don't think you're ever really fist pump calling ace six suited for the rest of your stack. Ace six of spades. I mean, you're not really fist pump calling every combination. I mean, you might be okay with getting it in with 8-7 of hearts, because you just have tons of equity. But I mean, the opponent is just going to be absolutely putting it onto you in these spots. And if they do, and you have a hand like Queen Jack off or King Jack off in this spot, you're going to be hating life. Because even if they check raise you all in on this turn and they have just, 10-9 of spades, any 8 or spade knocks you out of the tournament. And that's really like having a 30% chance to get knocked out of the tournament in that spot is just not amazing. I mean, you'll live with it. You're not like hating that. But I mean, that's like worst case scenario. Or it's not like entirely worst case, but like 10-8 of spades, 10-8 of hearts, Jack 8 of hearts, 8-7 of hearts, 8-7 or 8-6 of spades. I mean, there's 8-5 of spades, 5-4 of spades. And then not to mention all the hands that are beating you. I mean, they'll also have a lot of like King 5, Queen 6 of spades, King 7 of hearts, Queen 7 of hearts. Just so many hands that have a boatload of equity against you. So even if you call and, you are ahead, the risk premium makes it extremely close. And so it's just really overall not a good spot to be in. And so you really want to err on the side of caution when you're playing against these larger stacks. Even if they haven't 3-bet you yet, you just want to tighten up your range in general. And that's kind of the whole principle behind ICM, is just tightening up your range to adjust to playing versus these players in these spots. You got a final table. 7 players left, In this example, Under the Gun has a big stack, and they can open 20% of hands. And let's go to a different example. where under the gun has 20 big blinds. The range gets split. A third of their range gets cut off. A third of their range. Just completely gone. And that's the adjustment that you have to make in these spots because you're under the gun, you're the short stack, everybody's behind you, you don't know what can happen, and you're really going to have to be folding out a lot of hands that you might want to play, especially chippy from a chippy V standpoint, just because the risk of getting busted out is so great. And if we go to a shorter stack example, we can see how this is even exemplified. 24.3 versus, say, this spot. 13.6. Your range almost gets cut in half because you're a short stack, but there's also shorter stacks. Like, you're not the shortest stack. So your risk premium is super high because there's multiple players where if you fold and they open rip and get called by aces or kings or queens, they're basically out of the tournament. And so there's so many situations where in any given hand, the short stacks after you will bust out that folding and being this tight just makes sense. And honestly, I guarantee you it's raise folding ace 10 offsuit. Because, I mean, let's say the button min clicks to 4 big blinds. It's raise folding ace queen offsuit. Look how tight this range is. And GTO has some bluffs, but I mean in practice, you're probably not even going to be re-raising with these hands at these frequencies. You might just say you might just pick like ace 4 suited to be your raise and then your ace 5 suited to be your all in, and then you know jam these pairs. I don't know why you jam these pairs and fold out these ones though. Doesn't really make a lot of sense. I wonder why that is. That's an interesting spot actually. I might have to study that. But I mean, yeah, under the gun, pretty much pure folding, ace 10 off, ace jack off. Pure folding a lot of these bluffs. Oh, I was on the wrong thing. Yeah, that makes much more sense. Okay, so it's just flatting with sixes, jamming and calling, mixing with some of these pocket pairs about 50-50. And it's a super condensed range, and you're basically either playing call or jam with like min clicking aces. But honestly, I feel like, I mean, I'm not gonna argue with the robot, but this just seems so strong. I think in game, I think raising non all in with aces against a human would be worse than jamming or calling. Because I think against a human's gonna see you click it back, 4-bet click it back, and they're gonna be like, wow, that's insanely strong. And so if you click it back here, I mean, I don't think a human is gonna be fist pump jamming eights to a click back. Maybe. But they're definitely not gonna be bluffing. I mean, this bluff range is gonna get cut out entirely. So when you get jammed on, it's gonna be even more value heavy. So when you click it back like this, it's really you're hating, you know, you're hating a jam because a human's never going to, or very rarely going to bluff for the rest of your stack in that spot. And there are some really strong opponents, especially at the mid stakes and higher stakes online that will, but live especially, no human is gonna find the jam for the other half of your stack with ace 3 suited or ace 4 suited or ace 5 suited. That just, especially in the smaller stakes tournaments like the ones that I'm studying for, it's just never gonna happen. I mean, I think if you're playing like the 5K EPT Monte Carlo, I think there are gonna be some competent opponents that are gonna get in there with the ace 5 suited, ace 4 suited, and just stack off against you. But in practice, against a field of live players, I think it's important to understand the limitations of GTO because yeah, GTO says that humans are gonna be jamming these, but I guarantee you, I'm gonna go to WSOP to rant, and if I make this play and a human rips it in my face, they're not gonna have this. I'd bet my bankroll on it. I really would. I would bet my bankroll that no human is ever gonna have these hands. Not at the WSOP to rants playing for rings. Maybe playing for a bracelet, maybe once in a blue moon, but humans are just gonna so under bluff this spot and it's going to make it even more difficult to call, which is why I honestly, I think in live, I think in online this is fine, because you're going to be playing against players who are much more capable of making the correct decisions and the correct moves and finding those bluffs. But in live, I mean, I don't think the old guy in the 9 seat is really gonna be, 5 bet ripping for the other half of your stack. He's 5 suited. I just don't see it. But so call or all in. I think you could simplify this to call and all in, and it'd be fine. I mean, you're really only raising a few combos anyways, so you could just kind of simplify, take your aces out. Because I mean, most of these combos you'll see are aces. I mean, if we go to raise, it's aces, ace king off, or ace king suited, and then ace queen off, and ace queen suited, and that's really it. And then some bluffs at very low frequencies. But I mean, if you raise like this, is button ever calling? No, they're jamming or folding. And I think in game that's true too. I don't think anybody's calling this 10. I think people are just over folding to this because it's so strong in live and maybe online too, depending on what stakes you play. That I think people are going to be over folding to this raise. If you want to incorporate some more bluffs with this, I think being online, using this sizing and being slightly or having like a good amount of bluffs in here. Like I think if you did this with ace 5 suited, like at a 75% frequency, I think that would be a really good adjustment to most online players, because I think most online players at medium stakes especially would overfold to this sizing. But obviously that's something you could try out in practice and do some studying on yourself. I might go back later and look at that spot more deeply and see. But obviously it just depends on the player you're playing against. But cutting this out of your range is fine. Anyways, enough about my tangent about the weird GTO size. So let's move on from the land of solvers to the land of reality. Um, yeah, I mean, a 10 big blind strat, a 10 big blind stack. Oh, I really like this part. Okay. So basically, so you guys don't have to read this. What it's saying is that you can have a lot of min raises on the big blind out of position short stack. And what this can do is it can allow you to bluff some hands, and it can allow you to get more value out of your strong hands. So if you min raise, like if you click it back, let's say with, let's see what it uses here, king 8 suited. Let's say you click it back with king 8 suited. You can put half your stack in and then fold. And honestly, there's a very popular thing right now where a lot of tournament players will play pretty normally, but short stacks will, instead of opening to 2 big blinds, let's say you're on 9 bigs, they might open to 5 big blinds, especially from early position. And what that does is it allows them the opportunity to fold if there's some crazy action behind them. Because let's say, obviously these sizings aren't going to be correct, but let's say you're under the gun 7-handed on the final table, and then the low jack jams on you, the cutoff rejams, and then the button rejams. You probably aren't even calling queens here. I would fold out everything that's not kings and aces. And that allows you, and honestly, you can find some folds. We talked about that in the last video, where you can find some really super tight folds in these spots, just because yeah, sure, half your stack's committed, but I mean, if 2 players are at risk of being knocked out, if the action goes like this specifically, I mean, I just don't think the button the button's never bluffing. The button has aces, kings, or ace queen suited. I don't, or maybe queens. I don't think the button's ever jamming or maybe jack sometimes. I mean, but the point I'm making is the button has a really strong range, and the low jack doesn't. The cutoff kind of does, but he has some ace king and ace queen, ace king suited, ace king off, and then like jacks, tens, etc. But the button is never jamming as a bluff here. He has a super strong range that consists of very few hands that this range is beating. You're never calling ace 8 suited. You're never calling ace 9 suited, ace queen suited, queen jack. You're never calling these hands. Why? Like, I'm kind of. I mean, the solver has these at minus EV, but has it as a call anyways. And it's really interesting that it does this. It just does this, to balance. But I mean, even ace king suited is a minus EV call because it's so heavily dominated by the range of whatever just happened in front of you. King is barely plus EV. Obviously, aces is really the only hand that you're fist pump getting it in with. I mean, even queens here is minus EV. So I think limiting this range to just maybe some kings and then aces is completely fine. And that's why you really like if this guy's on 10 big blinds, putting in a 5 big blind open and then just seeing what unfolds after. Or let's say you're on the big blind with 40 bigs and the action goes like min click, or no, let's just say call, and then big blind. Let's say big blind has 15 bigs. He raises to 7 instead of jamming. And then the under the gun player jams. Oh, it really hates that. Oh, wait. Oh, that's why I hate that. I did that wrong. Okay. So call, raise, under the gun jams, and then button jams with aces. I mean, let's say he like limp trapped with like a super strong hand, like ace king, aces, kings. This is the only. These are the only hands you're calling with aces and kings, and you can fold everything that you are raising for value and as a bluff. Like you can fold ace king here for the other half of your stack. You can fold ace king. You can fold queens, jacks, tens, nines. Like you could. There's so many hands that you're raising for value in this spot that you can just let go, and you do that to save yourself and allow yourself to potentially find a ladder. Because I mean, getting it in bad versus two opponents that have super tight ranges, just not something you want to do. So finding those raise folds, those 3-bet folds when you're on a short stack can be super valuable tool. And you're obviously going to be doing this super polar. You're going to be doing this, I mean, online, you're going to be doing this super polar. I mean, this spot really won't give it justice. Let's see if I can find one that does. Let's find a short big blind. Here works. Raise under the gun. Small blind calls on a short stack. I mean, let's say button calls, because the solver actually does have button having some like a tiny amount of aces, just like a sliver of aces. So you raise for half of your stack in the big blind. Under the gun jams. Button calls. Only hand you're calling is aces here. Only hand. Everything else gets folded on the final table. Everything else is folded. These kings and ace king suited combos are minus EV to call. King jack suited minus EV. Ace jack suited minus EV. Ace queen suited strain. Oh, it's 0 EV. But I mean, you just hate calling it anything other than aces here, and that's why you 3-bet small instead of jamming, because in this spot it saves you a lot. And it also allows you to, put in, I mean, you're not going to be doing that with like 6 5s and 4s, but I mean, you can balance it out by doing that with like your super strong range. Like you can do that with jacks. And then if the flop comes like ace king high, you can just fold. And then you've saved your tournament life for free. Obviously, you know, you wouldn't love to see it, but I mean, nobody's gonna bluff into you in that spot because I mean, you're three betting such a strong range. That'd be suicidal to bluff that. Um, the computer will find some, but humans probably won't find very many of those bluffs. So, it, yeah, three bet folding a strong and polarized range to a small size can be a super, super strong addition to your range that will save you a lot more buy-ins. It'll save you from busting out a lot, and it'll just be overall good for you. And another thing to note that's very important is, well, there's two things. There's two things I want to mention. This is kind of going over what I was just saying. It can be valuable to fold a lot of super strong hands because like even having one chip left is valuable because like let's say you put it in with like you know jacks and that ace king flop comes out, you're out of the tournament because your opponent called you with ace 10 or ace 9 or whatever the big stack called you with ace 10 suited, and the flop came ace king x high, and you just check give up and save your tournament life versus being all in and losing. And so it saves you in some spots. And it's going to help you a lot more than it hurts you. And obviously and this is an important thing to note, there are a lot of hands that do like to see a flop. But there's a lot of hands that don't. A lot of hands like sixes, sevens, eights, nines, tens are just going to want to kind of get it in there. Because it's just generally not good for them to see a flop because there's a lot of overcards and you don't know which one your opponent will have, and it's not like you're gonna see a flop come 10-9 deuce and have pocket sixes and then fold. If you do that, I mean, good on you if you make the right fold, but I mean, it almost every flop is gonna have at least one overcard, and you can't just fold to any one overcard. So you kind of just want to be putting those hands in the, putting it all in with those hands, and then if you get knocked out, you get knocked out. But yeah, one thing that's pretty important thing to mention, there's no traps in this spot. Trapping is just never a good idea on a short stack because if you three bet small, or if your opponent three bets small and you shove for twice the amount, they're not folding. So there's no reason for you to trap in that, like, in any scenario. If you're on like 10 big blinds and the opponent three bets on the button to 5 bigs, I mean, why would you trap aces? You just let them realize their equity, completely whiff a flop. Let's say they have pocket sixes and they three bet small to ISO, and you just call with pocket aces to trap, and the flop comes king queen jack. You just missed out on 5 big blinds that they would have called pre, because now they can fold their pocket sixes because it's a terrible flop for them. So you really just kind of have to put it out there, and just get it in on a short stack in position. When you're the one putting it in, versus a three bet, you have a lot more control over what hands are going in, and you can have some more value and find more double ups. I'm not gonna go over these too much. Generally, just the rule of thumb continues. Be tight and polarized in any spot where you're not the chip leader. Chip leader, you can raise with a very, very wide linear range. I mean, we can go back to one of these spots again and look at it. Average stack of 25 bigs. I want to find one where there's a huge stack. Right here. Right here is a pretty good example. Low jack has 63 big blinds. Look how wide the low jack gets to open. He even open jams a lot of hands. He's opening 35% of hands, where the guy right in front of him that's second in chips is opening half of that. So, unless you're the chip leader, tight, polarized, get it in good, try to find a double up, or get out of the way, pretty much. Because, I mean, generally it's just pretty miserable. I'm not going to go over everything in this article because obviously I just don't want to be reading off the page to you guys. You guys are more than capable. I'll leave a link to the article in the description if you want to go back and give it a read yourself, because there are some things that I didn't cover. Like, for example, let's look at medium stack in position or medium stack out of position. Didn't really cover that too much, other than just, obviously be tighter, polarized, just try to get it in good, basically. If you are going to get it in, don't try to, ship it with king queen suited on a medium stack. It's just not generally what you want to be doing, especially in position when you have the freedom of choice. Out of position, it makes a little more sense. But yeah, and don't trap. That's like the number one thing that this article really hammers down is don't trap. Do not trap. Do not trap. Do not trap. Do not trap. Trapping is an ICM torch because you're losing out on a lot of chips that you would get anyways most of the time. And it also allows your opponents to knock you out of the tournament more often. And so those few extra chips that you might gain from trapping in the short run, in the long run, will catch up to you because you'll be getting knocked out sooner, more often, and you'll just be losing more buy-ins per 100. So, anyways, thank you guys for watching this study session on ICM with GTO Wizard. If you guys appreciated it, drop a like, comment, subscribe, whatever. Let me know what I should cover in the next video. And yeah, peace.